Montreal police spying on a journalist through their phone.
A profound sense of intrusion in my professional life.
Not only is freedom of the press important, it's one of the foundational safeguards of a free democracy, of a free society.
I lived in this fiction that this could not happen in this country.
This was a grave miscarriage of justice.
I've now called more than 430 charities. All those phone calls have found one gift.
Washington Post reporter who seems a little obsessed with Donald Trump.
I'm Diana Swain. We're the investigators. This is what we do. Journalists often come under attack for simply doing their jobs. Consider what's been taking place in the United States lately. But in some countries, reporters are subject to constant surveillance, their every move watched. And this week, we learned it's been happening here, too.
You know, I lived in this fiction that this could not happen in this country.
La Presse columnist Patrick Lagacé learned Montreal police had been spying on him for months as they investigated one of their own officers.
This is an exceptional situation. The journalist is not under investigation.
The police surveillance included tracking Lagacé's phone and gathering the identities of anyone he was in contact with. But he's not alone. At least 6 other journalists were also monitored by Quebec police, including reporters for Radio-Canada's investigative program Enquête.
I'm really shocked and disappointed, and you take things for granted in our democracy.
Politicians have been quick to react.
Not only is freedom of the press important, it's one of the foundational safeguards of a free democracy, of a free society.
So what's at stake when police spy on journalists? So, Patrick, let me ask you first of all, what has this cost you to have this level of surveillance of your activities?
A certain loss of innocence, I'd say. I really was living in this fairy tale where journalists are not special citizens, but you cannot spy on journalists as easily as what we've seen in this case.
Now, some people, I'll stop you, because some people would say, well, why not? Why are journalists any different?
Because if you have a judicial surveillance of journalists with the means, all the means that the police can gather in a criminal investigation, quite simply, you might not have any kind of relationship that's significant with sources who will tell you what the real score about issues are. Oftentimes, you know, institution, and I think it's normal, it's probably human nature, want to propagate their truth. Well, I think that the truth is something that does not always fit in a press release.
Tell me, what have you learned about the level of detail that was obtained about your pattern of movement?
Look, I have not accessed yet, we have not been able to access what they gathered on me. But what I know is that they accessed my metadata, and so hence the phone numbers that were calling me, that I was calling, same thing with the text messages, so not the content. If you want, that's what we call metadata. But the thing is, with metadata, you can track and you can quite see who I'm talking to, who I'm not talking to. And this is very invasive. And for a journalist, it's almost as bad as listening in on my conversation.
We learned this week that in addition to what was happening with you and Montreal police, there were half a dozen or so other journalists who had been watched at various times or had their call logs accessed by Sûreté de Québec. Let's listen to how police justified that.
The reporters that were, for which the warrants were issued, were directly at the heart of the investigation, and we were trying to ascertain if they had committed criminal infractions.
The explanations that you've heard in your case and just there, did they hold water for you?
It holds water if the only thing you care about is your investigation. If what you care about with a much larger vision is a free society, democracy, well, no, it doesn't hold water.
Quickly, before I let you go, we focused on journalists, and that's what we've heard about this week. But should Canadians at large be concerned about this? People who are not journalists?
Yes, and for a very good reason. If you want to have a healthy debates in this society, you cannot rely only on official truths. You cannot rely only on what spokesperson tell you. You cannot rely only on what you find in press releases. This is what a free press does. We try to get all the facts, even the facts that institutions like the police doesn't want you Canadians to hear about. So if we cannot do that freely, we cannot have healthy debate in this country.
Patrick, thank you.
No, thank you.
As that story shows, you never know when you're being watched or by whom. And the reality of that has been playing out in the United States all year long.
What's the solution? Revolution!
It's become a familiar sight on the streets of big U.S. cities.
Murder by police must stop. Look at these faces.
Activists protesting the police shootings of black men, much of that caught on camera. Shootings that have inflamed racial tensions in the United States.
He just shot his arm off.
Get down on the ground now! Get down on the ground now!
The country has been forced to come to grips with the killings and the anger that has spawned the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I'm not asking for justice. I'm demanding justice.
The footage grabbing headlines and adding to the public's outrage, but also prompting journalists, such as the CBC's Mark Kelly, to ask if the video tells the real story or distorts the truth. Does it hold police to account or unfairly paint a picture of brutality?
Body cameras are a tool. It's important to keep in mind that they are just one tool.
So what is it you wanted to determine by looking at this? Because, you know, these cell phones these days are ubiquitous, and so is the video that's coming from them.
Yeah, well, they've really changed the conversations we're seeing in the United States right now about how people see police and policing. And what we wanted to do, Diana, was put the police body camera on trial to see what this thing, how effective it is, what story it really tells or doesn't tell, how selective it is, how easy it is to distort the picture that it's conveying. Because right now, in America, every day, about 3 people will be killed by police. Every single day of the year. This is the reality. What people want is a fuller picture of what's happening because these cameras are ubiquitous. But these are randomly taken bystander videos as opposed to putting something on a police officer so it's there for us all to see. But as I mentioned, this has really changed the way we see policing.
As we well know, as people who work in television, there's always stuff outside the frame. You know, even as we try to be transparent, there's more beyond that. And the same is true of whatever you capture on this or on those body cameras.
Well, one of the issues that the police have is when these videos go viral, and these videos are out there and they're everywhere. When they go viral, typically what you see is maybe 35 seconds, maybe 45 seconds. What the police say is we want the full context, and that's why police actually support the idea of using body cameras. But it's really interesting, and we did some experiments with this just to see how those images, and they may seem so obvious to you as you watch them, but they can tell a very different story.
Let's take a look at that.
Watch the scenario play out from the point of view of the body cam without audio. Now watch it again from a wide angle with the audio.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Stop resisting!
Not resisting, sir. Not resisting, sir. Stop resisting, sir.
So what we saw the first time, that camera's moving around, and that's actually representing the tussle that is in fact not taking place.
And we have seen real life scenarios where this has happened, where the police are saying, stop resisting as they wrestle with a suspect, but a wider camera angle has shown that the person was lying prone on the ground saying, I am not resisting. Okay. And why this is important is this is evidence that can be used to convict people. So it's important to get the bigger picture. This is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle.
And you got police, though, saying this is exactly why I don't want a body cam on, because it's going to be used against me. So why are there some police forces, even in Canada,
who actually want to go this route?
Because, as they say, as I was mentioning before, they think it'll give a bigger picture of what happens. And they also think that what it shows is how the public can react to the police. That sometimes it's the public that is being very provocative, that they're the ones who are actually pushing police into a scenario, threatening them, endangering their lives as well. And they think that the body cameras can tell that full story. But at the end of the day, Diana, there's no one single tool. There's no one panacea that can rebuild relationships, build trust and transparency. But I think, certainly after all the investigation we've done on this, the body camera is an important tool to tell that fuller picture and to let everyone know they're being watched and that we will judge them based on what we see on those cameras.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Diana.
She's totally unhinged. We don't want any of that.
Tension in the United States has been about more than race. It's about who should lead the country. Have journalists helped or hurt voters' ability to make a good decision?
Washington Post reporter who seems a little obsessed with Donald Trump.
We'll speak with the Washington Post reporter facing criticism for what he's discovered about Donald Trump. That's next. But first, election night.
Decision 80.
A moment TV news networks spend months, even years, preparing for, figuring out how to tell a story that could change the course of history.
Sometimes people call them gimmicks that they use. Now, we don't want to say that.
Networks, including our own, roll out fancy new graphics.
Kind of virtual House of Commons.
Swanky new sets and, yes, sometimes gimmicks to get a competitive edge on the big night.
You'll see the map really tells the story, doesn't it?
Those maps have come a long way since the 80s. But when it comes to election night wizardry, who could forget CNN's 2008 coverage?
We're joined now via hologram by Will I Am, who is live in Grant Park. Let's see if we can beam him in now.
Yes, hologram. Some call these technical feats gratuitous, others effective storytelling. But rest assured, the investigators will never stoop to that. We'll be right back. Here are 5 things we learned this week from investigative journalists. A CBC Marketplace hidden camera investigation reveals some real estate agents are breaking the rules to double their sales commission. An investigation by ABC News and the Center for Public Integrity sparks a class action lawsuit. Hundreds of sick coal miners may have been wrongly diagnosed and denied disability benefits. CBC News learns Elizabeth Wetlaufer, the nurse charged in connection with 8 deaths at Ontario nursing homes, jumped from job to job before her arrest. An investigation by CBC's Go Public finds thousands of Canadians could be billed for illegally downloading content, such as video games, whether they're guilty of it or not. And the New York Times continues its investigation into Donald Trump's taxes. He may have avoided paying tens of millions of dollars in personal income tax by using a loophole that has since been outlawed. That story is one of many broken by investigative journalists in the run-up to Tuesday's historic election, revealing information that candidates would prefer to hide.
I was wondering if you think that you made a mistake in either in exclusively using your private email.
Hillary Clinton has been asked that question since 2015, when the New York Times first reported her use of a private email server as Secretary of State. Just one of many bombshell revelations that have rocked the election campaign. But it's the investigative reporting around Clinton's opponent that has dominated news coverage.
What is your tax rate?
It's none of your business.
Tried to arrange for dealings in Cuba, and
Just a small sample of what journalists like the Washington Post's David Fahrenthold have unearthed about Donald Trump's public dealings and private life. Fahrenthold contacted every charity Trump claimed had benefited from him or his foundation. The work took months, but yielded dizzying headlines. It's no surprise that the reaction to Fahrenthold's findings has been as polarized as the campaign itself.
This is the Washington Post, who's rapidly looking for something to take Mr. Trump down.
We have to understand that. Washington Post reporter who seems a little obsessed with Donald Trump these days.
Criticism of a newspaper that's seen by many as the vanguard of investigative journalism, famous for breaking the Watergate scandal. Will the investigative journalism that's been done during this campaign ultimately come to be seen in the same celebrated light? So, David, let me start there. Do you think that the journalism being done now is going to be remembered as hitting the high water mark or falling short of that?
I don't think people generally remember campaign coverage as being any great high watermark of journalism. It's too fast moving, and there's often not enough focus on any one particular thing. But there have been some really good things in this campaign. A lot of instances where people have focused on one topic, particularly in Trump or Clinton's background. That Times story you mentioned, this New York Times story that discovered Clinton's private email server last year, that was a big deal. Their story on Trump's tax returns that were mailed to them anonymously was a big deal. There's been others that have kind of changed the campaign, but nothing like Watergate that actually brought down a sitting president.
Let's talk about the journalism that you did. And it's interesting because a lot of people are holding it up as exactly this is what investigative journalism is. You actually pick up the phone and you start doing some research. So tell me what you did and what do you think about the fact that people are talking about it as an example of things that, frankly, we should all be doing all the time?
Well, that part is extremely flattering. For me, what's important here was that Trump holds so many important things about himself. It keeps them private. It doesn't tell you. You have to trust him. What are his debts? What does he pay in taxes? How much money is he actually worth? The good thing for me about the studying his charity was that there's actually another party in the transaction. You can call somebody and find out whether Donald Trump lived up to his promises. And specifically, you can call the charities that he promised to help or that he might have been helping to see, well, okay, if Donald Trump has been doing what he said he did, there should be tens of millions of dollars out there in the hands of charities and grateful charities saying, thank you, Donald Trump, that I could find. So that's what I set out to do, was to find outsiders who could check something very important about Donald Trump.
And what did you find ultimately?
So I've now called more than 430 charities, and these are charities that seemed close to Trump. The Trump people haven't cooperated at all. They haven't given me a list of the charities Trump helped. They've just said, oh, he gives tens of millions of dollars and it's out there someplace. I've kind of reverse engineered that list. I've got to 430 charities, and all those phone calls have found one gift out of Trump's own pocket between 2008 and May of this year. That was a gift for less than $10,000 in 2009. That's the only gift that I've found out of his own pocket when there's supposed to be tens of millions out there.
It's incredible, and it is good work. And I'm wondering, though, if you think the level of scrutiny that's been brought to both these people will continue past Tuesday, in particular focused on whomever wins, or is there going to be a sense of you got to go hands off now because they've been chosen by the people?
I don't think that will happen in either case. I think either one of these candidates is likely to face probably renewed scrutiny if they win, because there'll be a Congress, especially Clinton. She will probably have a Republican Congress interested in investigating her. If Trump wins, I think there'll be even more people out there investigating him, because people will now realize, wow, he's going to be the president. We need to learn more about his background and his relationships.
Where are you going to be Tuesday night?
I'll be here. My job is to write the web story that will tell people when the race has been called for Clinton or for Trump. So one of the jobs in the next few days is to pre-write the long story that says Clinton wins and the long one that says Trump wins, so we can just slap it on there. I don't have to write it on the fly when the race is called.
And just make sure you press send on the right one.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
You are fascinated with sex and you don't care about public policy.
A bizarre moment for sure, but it's a serious question for journalists. How to report on the private lives of public figures. My POV just ahead. Plus, ask me anything.
What kind of advice would you give on building genuine and trusting relationships with sources?
It's a good question. I'll try to answer it next. First, investigators on assignment.
I'm Matt Kwong, an online reporter with CBC News in Washington. I've been traveling all around the United States during this most toxic of election campaigns. Democratic states, Republican states, and swing states that could determine the next president. I've seen how polarizing these candidates are for some voters, how ugly this contest has become, and I've learned also not to be surprised by yet another October surprise. On election night, I'll be part of a team bringing you live coverage at cbcnews.ca. Then I'm hitting the road to talk to American voters about how such a divided country can come back together again.
What we aim to do with this program is bring everybody into investigative journalism, talk about what we do behind the scenes, and part of that is to have you ask me anything. So Chantel is standing by with a question. What would you like to know?
Well, Diana, I'm wondering what kind of advice would you give on building genuine and trusting relationships with sources without crossing ethical lines or risking conflicts of interest?
It's interesting. I mean, I think what we've explored on the program this week is that journalists need to have a relationship of trust with the people that they talk to. And you build your own relationship as a journalist by showing that that trust can be believed in through your career. I mean, that's how you establish your reputation. And you can build a rapport with people, you can feel empathy for them, but you always have to maintain that there's a line. You are a journalist doing a job. And it's why we don't cover stories that involve our own families or people that we're close to, because it's next to impossible to be objective. You really do have a conflict, and your work will suffer. So maintaining that line, maybe even restating that the line needs to be there, is important when you're doing your work as a journalist. Thanks for the question.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, we've put this off as long as we can, but it's time for the talk. You know, that talk. You've heard the expression that sex sells. People often say that to deride coverage in the media they think is just about selling more newspapers or getting higher ratings. Many journalists, in fact, don't even want to do stories about it because they don't want to be seen as pandering. So what do you do when there's just no getting around sex?
You are fascinated with sex and you don't care about public policy. Now, that's what I get out of
Newt Gingrich and Megyn Kelly in their now infamous sparring match over Trump. His supporters charge the media has been obsessed with Trump's comments about women and those who accused him of touching them inappropriately. Is there a genuine suggestion here that that should have been ignored? This made that impossible.
I just start kissing them. It's like
And for the record, there is a world of difference between sex and sexual assault. The coverage has cut both ways. Recall that Trump sat Bill Clinton's accusers in the audience at one of the debates. Hillary Clinton's critics argue her husband, no longer constrained by the role of running the country, will have too much time on his hands in the White House, and they've made sure to remind us what happened last time he was there.
I misled people, including even my wife.
Given that not that long ago, Congress nearly impeached a president for lying about sex, it's pretty tough to argue that it doesn't matter. So no, Newt, we are not obsessed with sex. But the days when journalists looked the other way, as Marilyn Monroe visited the White House, are long gone. Journalists tend to be obsessed with the story, wherever it leads. I'm Diana Swain. This is The Investigators.